The following message is a public service announcement on the dangers of gambling. What you are about to see is real life footage on the harsh realities of gambler. If you or a trailblazer you know is struggling, seek help. There's hope and support available. So how about that? 100 million fragments. So this is something you may have seen floating around lately with people sharing billion damage showcases. I know there was one in China with a 700,000 fragment showcase and one on Reddit with 1.8 million. So these are all using some kind of variation of this build, but I'm pretty sure that the team over at StyDB hold the current record for this as far as I know. The basic idea of it is to get a truckload of fragments by repeatedly discarding the silver coin of discord and then locking out with the robe of beauty for some insane damage increases. So when we first started testing this, we actually wanted to go for the highest damage value possible, but it was soon abundantly clear that we were just dealing way too much damage, that we were easily overflowing and capping out the damage quite quickly. So instead of focusing for damage, we decided to go for the highest possible fragment value. Spoiler alert, we capped that as well. So before we jump right in, let's get some disclaimers out of the way. This is going to be highly RNG, as we're going to be dependent on a number of curios that we simply can't fish from the starting rewards. So this means that we're going to need to actually progress through plane 1 before resetting. So if you're one of those people who complain about doing a 40-second reset for a starting blessing, you're probably not going to want to try this. Compared to our last build that we spoke about, this is nowhere near as reliable. If you're after a build to help you clear Conundrum 12 easily, then I would suggest that you check out that video and invoke the power of capitalism instead. But if you just want to do some batshit insane damage per screenshot, then I'm pretty confident that nothing will ever come close to this. It's pretty much game over for damage per screenshot methods now. Everyone chasing numbers will now be using this method, I guarantee it. Okay, so let's break it down. We'll cover the main components of the build first, and then the methodology in putting it all together, and then we'll go over the custom Die Loadouts at the end. So, the typical Genius Society curio. So this straight up doubles all fragments that you earn. So just to keep things simple, I'm going to refer to the numbers on every following curio and interaction, assuming that we have this curio. The gold coin of discord, every time we step into another domain, we get a 12% increase to our current fragment. Amazing curio, the sooner we get it, the more we make off of it. The silver coin of discord, so the hero of the build here. This instantly doubles your fragments when you receive it, and the build is going to revolve around triggering this interaction over and over and over again, exponentially increasing our fragments. So speaking of which, the heterogeneity reforged die face is what we'll be using to repeatedly trigger this effect. This die face lets us discard one curio and then obtain it again, upon which it's going to trigger its effect again. Now, to make use of all these fragments, we either have the robe of beauty, which gives us 16% damage for every 100 fragments that we hold, or the cavity model system, which makes us lose all of our fragments but gives us 24% crit damage for every 100 fragments that we lost. And now I like to call this our insurance policy, because honestly there's nothing worse than racking up 100 million fragments and then failing to get our robe or tooth to make it happen. So the die face general buff investment is our insurance. It makes it so that our characters do additional damage equal to 25% of their attack for every 100 fragments that we hold. So with 100 million fragments, we're looking at 25 million% of our attack. Not bad for an insurance policy. Alright, so in terms of methodology, first up we're going to be running with the data inflation dice, as this gives us one cheat at the start of every plane, along with one reroll after every move. So this guarantees us at least 4 cheats and close to 30 rerolls at a minimum, which lets us maximize the amount of reforges that we're able to get later on. Then we need to fish for the right curios to even begin to make this a possibility. So the most reliable way to get 2 of our curios is to first set up the IPC banking event. Part 1 lets us deposit some fragments, upon which we can then start finding part 2. So make sure you set this up first so that we can start encountering part 2 on our runs. So now we want to start fishing for IPC banking part 2. The reason for this is that it has a chance to show up with this erudition option. You don't actually need to be running the path or erudition for this to show up, you just need positive introcognition. So this option then gives us both the gold coin of discord and also the typical Genius Society curio. We want to get this as early as possible, so your first few moves should be creating and duplicating choice and double occurrences on your map to increase the chance that we get this. With that done, we now need the silver coin of discord. So this is going to be purely up to luck, but if you want the best chance of this, we're going to be wanting to duplicate and hit up as many transaction domains as we can, as it allows us to pick between 3 curios. And now the reason why this is important is that we actually don't want to pick up curios on this run. So yes, while you can get random curios from beacons and occurrences, it's important that our curio numbers are kept as low as possible. This is because that once we start spamming our reforged die face, it picks 3 curios at random for us to select from, and we want the silver coin of discord to show up as an option every single time. And for this to happen, we ideally want to be running exactly 3 curios for as long as possible. So You can gamble on occurrences that give curios, but keep in mind that we're going to need to use our die faces to discard these curios later on to drop our curio count back down to 3. So that's really the gist of getting the build online. Fish for IPC banking part 2 for the gold coin and gossip curio, aim for the silver coin by the end of plane 1 while keeping your curio count as low as possible. So just for miscellaneous tips, throughout your run, especially early on, you want to do what you can to build fragments through occurrence choices. This really helps ramp up the exponential growth of your savings over time. So things like IPC investment, aha doll, bounty hunter occurrences are great. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these since there's so many, but it should be pretty self-explanatory. And so we also want to be hitting intra-cognition domains when possible as well, as these are also a great way of racking up more cheats and rerolls. When running the data inflation die, we already get so many cheats and rerolls, but these can still really help a lot since it lets us spend some cheats early on to discard excess curios or to generate more fragments through die rolls. So now with that said, let's talk about die faces for this. Obviously we're going to be running with the heterogeneity reforged die face. So this is the start of the show when we get all the curios that we need. General inspiration is a great one. We're going to be using this to duplicate some domains depending on what we need. So early on I would be duplicating occurrences while we try to snipe the IPC banking occurrence. After that, I would refocus on duplicating transaction domains so that we can try to snipe the silver coin. And we can also use it on intra-cognition domains whenever we're running low on cheats or rerolls. Our next die face, General Diffusion, generates 3 beacons on the field at random. So this one's a good one because we want choice occurrences and double occurrences to increase the likelihood that we find IPC banking 2. But the real reason we run this is this line here. This effect will not be generated again after taking effect on this plane. So what this means is that after we roll this die face once, you will never naturally roll this die face ever again. This effectively gives us a 5-sided dice. This is absolutely huge, and we want to be using one cheat at the start of plane 2 specifically to trigger this so that we can increase the chance of us hitting reforges even more. General Pawn Shop lets us discard 1 curio and gain 100 fragments, so this is what we'll be using to keep our curio count low. Whenever we're forced to get a curio that isn't one of the ones that we're after, we can use this to get rid of it and then also net ourselves 200 fragments when we're running the gossip curio. And then I've got general time trade just as a way to get fragments early on. With the gossip curio, this is giving us 400 fragments every single time. So this is the most fragments that you can get from a single die face with this build, so it's a great way of building our base fragments. And then we've got our insurance policy, general buff investment, which lets us do an additional 25% of our attack and damage for every 100 fragments that we have in our possession. So it only lasts 5 turns normally, but due to the fact that we're running the data inflation dice, it will last for the entirety of the battle, although that doesn't really matter with how much damage we'll be doing. So for closing remarks, this is purely a gimmick build for damage per screenshot. It's actually quite terrible for high conundrum runs as you're going to be incredibly weak early on, as we won't be picking up many blessings or curios along the way. So I'm actually really curious to see what the community can do with this. I think at this point the StarDB team have already discovered the upper limits of the build, as we found that once you hit 100 million fragments, the game actually stops giving you fragments. However, if you're at the cusp of 100 million, it will still let you increase it, which is how some of our users managed to get close to 150 million fragments. So I would be really interested to see if anyone can beat that. So I personally don't have the time to be going for this, but I'd love to see what you guys can do. Shoot me a message or tag me in the comments if you manage to beat 150 million, or come pop into the StarDB Discord and say hello. So good luck everyone.